All right, the first speaker today after our opening keynote is Bob Pearson. He's a globally recognized leader and marketing visionary, driving pragmatic disruption in the world of social commerce. He's the president of the W2O Group, which is an independent network of digital communications and marketing companies known for their creation of algorithms and custom software that evolves current models and creates unique advantage for their clients. The firm's been named Digital Agency of the Year by the Holmes Report for 3 of the past 4 years. Bob's thinking's been featured in numerous books and case studies on how to effectively use social media in business. After the success of his book, Pre-Commerce, Bob is currently working on a new book on the future of media titled Storytizing: What's Next After Advertising, that will be available in early 2015. Please welcome Bob Pearson.
Great. Thank you, Lizzie. Before I get started, I just want to congratulate all of you. This is really impressive. I get an opportunity to travel around the world and speak quite frequently, and it's very rare that you see a city that's come together like this. I hear there's, I think, 400 attendees. There's about 4,000 people in the database, all focused in analytics. So for me, that's heaven. I mean, this is really cool, and makes me even more pleased that we opened an office here. David Witt, who's back there, is our leader of the Minneapolis office, as well as some other things within the firm with our team today. So, congratulations to you for doing that. What I'm going to talk about here are what we call 10 pragmatic disruptive trends in our industry. This is based on working with Fortune 500 companies, seeing what they're doing, whether it's in China or here or Brazil or you name it, and then saying, okay, what does it mean for us in terms of what's next? And so you'll see this as we go through this. I'm going to hopefully leave time for a little bit of Q&A. So the first one here is that if we actually think about it, I mean, we use big data all the time as a term, and I like to think that actually that's kind of a misnomer. It makes us think about, things might be too complex or too hard, but actually the good news is we have human beings involved, and human beings always follow patterns. And so that actually leads to small data. And so when we think about that, it's like, what does that actually mean? So when we get into it, when we build algorithms or software solutions, what we think about here is, how does the brain work? Well, the brain works, there's a finite number of Q&As that people will actually want to know for any topic. So if you took a disease like type 2 diabetes, there may be only 312 questions that people can answer, or ask rather. So if you answer all of them and you syndicate them out properly, you can actually dominate search. But people don't think about that. They don't think of a finite amount of content, they just put content out. If we think about an issue, I was just actually teaching a class at the State Department a week ago, and we were talking to all the embassy spokespeople about how to handle issues. And one of the things we were saying to them is, when you look at any kind of crisis or issue that can come up, there's approximately 77 questions that people ask over and over. So if you actually understand what those questions are, you can start to prepare even more effectively in advance of an issue. But for some reason, we don't do that. Now, the same thing applies to language. There's only about 15 words or phrases that usually will drive people to the story that you care about through search. What are they? And when you think about people who drive share of conversation in a market, what we've found over and over in any market in the world, there's never more than 50 people who drive the majority of share of conversation for a brand. And we work with brands like Harry Potter, The Hobbit, Red Bull, and others. So, super high volume. And you still don't have more than 50 people in a country that are driving the majority of conversation. So when you think finite, you start to actually think about, hey, there's ways that we can actually make this stuff a heck of a lot more simple. One example of this is what we believe is the birth of custom search engines. So when you think about B2B. In B2B, there is a discrete number of people that we care about, whether it's 300,000 resellers, or 5,000 sales reps, or 10,000 suppliers, but there's a discrete set of people. If you can actually now build software to actually identify who these folks are with 100% accuracy, and then basically put them into a platform and see exactly what they're doing. So now, for the first time, we're able to see what content do they like, what time of day do they go online, what is the referral network, what type of media do they like, what outlets should we advertise in. So basically, we're using custom search to make us smarter about a B2B audience, and we're using earned media to make paid media smarter. So an example of this is we actually, in our firm, we actually looked at healthcare. And we said, okay, this is a relatively complex area. There's about 7 million medical providers in the US, and there's about 600,000 plus physicians. And basically, we know exactly which providers and physicians are doing what by topic, by city, by category. So you say, what are cardiologists doing in Minnesota right now? We can tell you that, or for the next month or week or year. The key thing is make it more simple to focus on the audience you care about and filter out all the noise, and we get to a much better place. And I think there's still too many systems out there that basically give us a lot of information, and then we spend all of our time trying to sort through it, rather than actually really focusing on what matters. The other thing you see, and this is just to take the physician example, is that a lot of myths get exploded when you look at B2B audiences. So if you think of physicians, people will say, well, older physicians aren't online. Physicians talk to other physicians. They only talk to physicians who are like them. All of those points are wrong. Actually, 40 and older physicians are highly active. Physicians are often talking to patients and third-party groups because they really don't care. They just want to talk to people who are influential. The other thing you see in a marketplace with technology being the way it is that the idea of who an influencer is changing as well. So in a B2B category, like healthcare, people used to say, well, it's the physician who published the most, who's on the most advisory boards, who's at the FDA all the time, and they absolutely have influence. But what we're seeing online is the people who are not publishing a lot, but maybe are really intelligent and understand how to explain things to people, are having outsized influence on the marketplace. So there's actually two different types of influencers that are moving into it. Those who impact offline, those who impact online, and there's some crossover. So it's just an interesting thing to think about. Now, the other thing is there's a big shift that we call forensic analytics. So the way I would describe this is when you think of the future of a brand would have maybe 20, 30, 40, or 50 filters. So what we know today is we can look at a lot of things. We can look at language or channel or number of influencers and all that. But what you really want to do is you want to actually move towards where you can say, I only really want to understand if people like laptops with big screens and a lot of memory with XYZ, and you have that filter put in place, and you can see exactly what people are doing online. But you may have 30 other filters like that related to the attributes of that same exact brand that you care about, and you can see it in a dashboard and decide which ones you care about the most. Now, in order to get there, from a data standpoint, we have a lot of hard work ahead of us. The number one thing is ingestion of data and being able to do that properly, right? So we all know we have issues with, we have DataSift, which is great to get us information. Moreover is excellent worldwide. It's very hard to get the right data out of China and some other countries, but we have to do an even better job in terms of how do we actually ingest the right data. Building the filters is one other thing, the screens is another, and then also looking at location-based insights. So in this day and age, as you know, you can put a lens, like we could put a lens over this building right now, and we can see exactly what everyone's saying publicly. So when you think about that, we're moving to an era where you would actually be able to put lenses over an entire retail chain, but you'd also be able to see what people are saying in real time overall, but you'd also be able to see what their historical patterns were for the last 3 years. And so when you put those together, you all of a sudden have a very different view of the market than if you're just looking at data as one bucket. Okay? Now, the shift from gut feel to science and word of mouth. One of the things that's always, I guess the right way to say it is it's always bothered me, is with word of mouth, people kind of make it up, right? So when you talk about viral marketing or why did a video do well or something else, people aren't really sure why something took off, but they take credit for it if it worked. And so we thought, well, let's put some science to this and actually say, okay, how do we actually really change this and how we think about it? And one of the things that was an inspiration is to think of the DMA structure in the US. So the DMA structure, as you know, is population-based, right? And so that's worked for many years when TV was king and all we did was advertise on TV. Those days are long gone. So the DMA structure doesn't make sense anymore. The other thing is when you think of things like the celebrity indexes of a Q-score, when you actually look at how they measure, those are, again, very old school. So there's got to be a better way to do this. So one of the things that we've been playing around with This is an alpha that we've been working on. And basically what we did is we thought, okay, if you're looking at influencers, and the way we normally do it, we look at like language or country and go in, and then see who drives share conversation for a brand. But what if you actually could index content by town, city, state, out? And if you could do that, you can actually see what people are consuming online in real time, or whatever period you want, and you can start to see patterns. So in this case for Texas, because a lot of us are there, we basically index about 6 million articles at a time. We put them against all the towns related to the topics we're looking at for this particular alpha. And what we find is that the DMA structure is totally gone. There's 130 towns roughly that matter in Texas. And if you look at the topic, you can see which towns are related to that topic. So in other words, if you're speaking in El Paso, there may be 20 other towns that are related to that same topic in terms of key influence. So you want to make sure your information goes to the other 19 towns. Now, why this is important is the future, and folks like yourself will probably figure this out, is eventually from a campaign standpoint, the entire country will be mapped out like this. And as we put information into the market, basically the towns that have the highest potential with the highest sales near the most important stores will light up. And so we'll see where people are telling our story in the right places, we'll see where they're not, and we're going to understand where to put earned media or paid media in order to make up for those gaps. So the idea of campaign reporting will become real-time campaign reporting. It won't be, I think what Paul did was great. Like I think where he's going is exactly where we need to go in terms of standardization of data, standardization of metrics, standardization of scorecards. We need to take it in another level from there and actually say, here's exactly what's happening in the marketplace you care about by town. Now, the shift from advertising to storytelling. So when you think of advertising, we all know how it works, and what advertising is really doing is it's interrupting us, getting our attention so it can move us somewhere else, so we can get part of the story, and then maybe go somewhere else and get another part of the story, and it loses us as we do that. It may make us aware, but it often loses us. So what we've been thinking about is what is that next trend? And the next trend we see is really what we call storytelling, which is how do you take the whole story for a brand and deliver it directly to the customer that you care about. So one of the ways to do it, not the only way, is basically do something that we've done for many years. We've built websites for forever, but now we can build portable websites that actually, if you think about it, you could have like the video for your brand surrounded by FAQs and slides and other videos and other information, so that can go directly to the customer. It can get embedded on their social channel, it can get embedded in a blog, it can get embedded in a website, they can share it wherever you want, and you can change the content dynamically. So if you see that people like 2 things on it and they don't like 3 other things, you kill the 3 other things, you put in 3 new things, and it happens everywhere in real time. Now, why is that important? That's the example of what we can do today. But where we see campaigns going is really what's important. Because in the advertising world, we've been conditioned that we take 6 to 9 months to create a campaign, and then we eventually launch it. And by the time we launch it, as we know, it's already outdated and not aligned with the marketplace, because the marketplace has shifted long ago while we were getting approvals and making sure everything was done. We're moving now into an era where we can do real-time campaigns. So the kind of stuff that you can do with analytics now is if you're basically setting in place the right filters so you know who you're looking for in the marketplace, when you see people actually acting in a certain way, you realize you have a window where you can put content into the marketplace and move the market. Now, of course, if you miss the window, you miss the opportunity. So we're getting into places where you can have 2, 3, 4-hour windows where based on what the market is doing, you can actually shape. And that is going to mean that what do we need to do? We need to build a library of content for a campaign that can be accessed quickly that's already approved, right? So we have to almost think backwards and say, how do we prepare for that? And how do we set the right filters in place? And then how do we keep testing with the market? And it's pretty cool. When you do it well, it works great. And of course, when you miss, right? But this is a trial and error thing as we go. Top of the funnel was mentioned. That's another thing that's high on the list here. The top of the funnel, I mean, CRM, we all know how CRM works. We're moving towards a model that we call pure-based CRM. So if you think of the typical model with the filter, our point of view is that the top of the funnel is actually unnecessary as we move forward. The expertise that you all have in the room, can be applied to looking at exactly where your customers are in Twitter and other social channels where everything's public. And if you know what you're looking for, you can find the, let's say, top 100,000 people that actually already dig your product. And then you can start to give them content and watch where they go. And they're basically leading you to the next million people. So all of a sudden we have a peer-based CRM system that is free that we can now track in online. Very different than going out to 5 million people and praying that 100,000 respond. And when I was at Dell, we always used to remind people that if you send out to 5 million and 100,000 respond, 4.9 million people didn't like it, right? So, you know, it's not a good model. We'd never create a new model and say, we think this is a great model because we think that, you know, 99.5% of our customers will hate it every time we do it, right? We just wouldn't do it. So the top of the funnel is changing. Predictive marketing. There's a lot of, this is like the next big buzzword, right? Everyone's talking about predictive marketing. I look at predictive marketing as understanding history well. It's not so much, I don't think anyone has a crystal ball and can say, here's what's going to happen in 3 months and I'm sure of it. I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch. But to go back in time and look at history well is absolutely possible. And this is an example where I can't get into too much detail, but I'm going to give you the headlines of it. We work with Warner Brothers, and so one of the things we've done with them is we've actually went back and said, how would you actually predict what channels to use before theatrical release, and then from the theatrical release to DVD and game, and then next movie in the franchise, if there's a franchise. Well, what you do is you basically looked at every single movie that's ever been created by Warner Brothers, every single movie ever created by a competitor, put it all together with an algorithm, and the statistical accuracy is tremendous in terms of understanding what channels matter by week leading up to a theatrical release and from theatrical release to DVD and game. So it's the beginning of understanding media planning from an earned standpoint. So I think like this group is going to be part of revolutionizing how media planning is done. Again, the days of, you know, think of how it's done today. Advertisers drive media planning based on what they did last time. And their great knowledge of the market, but earned media is really our customers telling us what matters. So if we're able to actually get precise on exactly how they move up to a point of sale, we can actually do media planning for earned and also influence where paid goes as well. So this is the very beginning of a much bigger trend. And that leads into this next one, which is the shift from paid media to smart media. So the way I like to think of it is what I was just getting at was earned media is our customers telling us what they care about, right? Shared media is our customers having fun or learning more with us. Owned media is when they're coming to us because they need something. And paid media is because we're waking them up. So if we think about the peso model in reverse, this is something that David Witt and I were talking about at Hershey when he was there years ago, as we were saying, okay, the peso model is actually flipping completely, right? And so earned is actually going to make paid smarter. And so when you think about that, just take one example here. You go into an advertising campaign, and we're looking at flights, right? So we're buying flights, let's say, of 3 months at a time. Let's say it's a big brand, and they're buying $150 million at a time. Well, as you're doing the flight, you can actually be putting more content into the market and earned by target segment and actually watch what's happening. And then you can say, okay, for these 2 target segments out of 5, people in earned are loving what we're doing with the campaign. Let's put more against those 2 target segments in the next flight. There's 2 that are like dead. No one cares. Let's kill those segments for the next flight. And there's 1 that's neutral. We got to figure out something because we don't know enough yet. But you basically keep calibrating your paid spend based on what you're learning in earned because you're putting in earned related to the paid campaign, right? So now, the next one is building earned media channels worldwide. So imagine that you are a publisher or you're the CEO of a cable network and you're thinking, how do I build channels? Well, the same exact mentality applies to what we can do with data today. So a model that we all know very well, the industry standard model is the 1-9-90 model, right? So in any market worldwide, less than 1% of people create content, approximately 9% of people share content. In a passionate marketplace, it can get as high as 20%. Never ever seen it in about 10 years get higher than 20. And then the rest of the world lurks and learns. They just consume stuff, they don't really do much. So the 1%, we can see exactly who they are, right? Because they're creating content, we know exactly who's influenced. The 9% is becoming more enabled than ever by technology, and they can move content for you. So they may not ever write a blog post, but they are going to take your content, they dig what you do, and they're going to move it. So imagine having 20 countries for a big brand, and you say, I'm going to find the top 1,000 people in each country for this brand who love everything we do and will move whatever we give them. You've just basically built a 20,000 person sales force that is going to move the content to move the market for you whenever you want. Not with perfection. You have to give them the right content and everything else. But you can start to do that methodically by brand, by key country, worldwide. And that's a pretty exciting thing to think about when you think of the 9% coming alive for us. The last one here is the shift from responsive design to responsive experience. So responsive design, another buzzword that we all have used for years, and I mean, it's great, right? We had to make a move so you don't go on your phone and you have this absolutely terrible experience with the website. Well, okay, we've done a lot of that change. Now it's actually responsive experience, which is basically, are you getting the experience you want when you go use the device of your choice to get the content you were requesting? So you're not getting to the site that you asked to get to, you're getting to the content you want. And so that is a very different game. And when we get into that, I'm going to get into, I think I just put them out of order here. Here's an example of this. So if you think about this when, like this is just a random site, doesn't matter, the company, but like I'm searching, and I search and I say, government white paper, Pegasystems. And as I do that, what I'm coming into is this, right? Because behind the website, we have built 10, 20, 30 experiences that are related to what people search for, so when they come to the site, they have a responsive experience. And they still have the whole website all around them, but they basically have the ability to get what they want right away. That is going to be a game changer, extremely subtle, versus just getting people to the top of the site. So let me just go back here, and then I'm just going to open up for questions here. I think I'm going to not go through that one. And let's just go right to questions, because I wanted to make sure we left at least 10 minutes for Q&A. Who would like to start? There's so many smart people here. There's got to be a bunch. Yeah.
Applications to small and mid-sized businesses, what you guys are doing, because obviously it's fascinating stuff. I assume at a larger enterprise level, that a lot of stuff you apply to, you see the technology being monetized in the future where small and mid-sized businesses can do similar analysis if they have access to it.
Yes, because what we're getting to now is a lot of this technology is starting to get into the cloud. And so as we get into the cloud, then any business of any size can use the same stuff. So now if you have zero money and you can't get to that point yet, there's still a lot of the stuff that can be done for free. You can do a 10-channel analysis, and you can see exactly what channels matter for your brand. You can actually do a rough version of who the influencers are. You separate them versus who actually shares. There's things that you can still do to get moving. But the big move, really, the democratization move will be as this stuff gets more in the cloud, so anyone can use it. And that's right around the corner. Other thoughts or questions? Could be about the Vikings. Teddy Bridgewater, is he going to play? Seems pretty good. Yeah, absolutely. So let me give you another example of this. So one of the keys behind it is brand taxonomy, right? So when you think about the way we've always done taxonomy in the past, we've done it like for architecture or website, right? And we just figure out what the architecture is, and we go from there. With brand taxonomy, what you're doing is you're actually looking at what your customers are actually doing online. And you're looking at exactly what experiences they seek and that kind of thing. And you're overlaying that with what you're investing in, and you actually then can build a brand taxonomy. So for one of our clients, we actually look at every single sport or activity they do related to this brand, every single sub-sport, every single location, every single entertainer, athlete, or other person they've invested in, every partner that they have, and it ends up being this like filter that the world's information goes through, and you can actually see who's actually coming through for you, who's not, and so on. And it sounds complicated, but it's actually, when you look at the results, it's actually quite simple. You just, so it actually allows you to say, this athlete that we're spending a lot of money on, it's not worth it at all. Their volume is massive, but what they do for our brand is minimal. And yet, right now, a lot of times they go, yeah, we're cool, we mention you all the time, we wore the t-shirt, and you're like, well, yeah, but there's no evidence that anyone cares, right? So, or you're looking at what a supplier says they're going to do in Minneapolis for a product like Red Bull, and you're like, okay, you have street teams going out, what are they really doing, right? But brand taxonomy, that ability to do that type of architecture is the key.
We're talking about, of course, our target markets are both patients, caregivers, and physicians. We found just at the surface, it's easier to listen to what's happening in the social sphere from the patient-caregiver aspect, and a little bit more difficult to look at it from the standpoint of what are the physicians saying out there that aren't, top influencers.
Yeah.
Moving ahead and alluding to a slide I thought I saw where you were saying that physicians are changing their influence due to social media. Do you see physicians and healthcare professionals participating more in public forums in the social sphere as opposed to proprietary forums and private communities?
Yes, yes. It's a great question. So I'll give you my view based on insights I have and data and also some personal opinion thrown in. But private communities, to me, generally don't work. They might work temporarily. They do not work long term, mainly because you can't integrate with search and you can't get all the goodness of other influencers that you would not have known otherwise. So there's a lot of examples of that. I don't want to give examples because then I don't want to go after a company in saying that. What we're seeing with physicians is they're not any different than consumers. The 1-9-90 rule applies. So if there's 600,000 physicians in the US, there's about 60,000 that actually actively share, and there's about 6,000 that are really intensely shaping the market. So if you actually know who they are, and then you break it down by therapeutic area, you can actually start to shape your own market with them. And that may change over time, but the dynamics we're seeing are roughly the same, which is interesting. And the big thing is they do influence all the other doctors who are consuming content, who say, like, I don't go online and I don't do this. But it's like, but they are online and we can see what they're doing. And they are actually consuming.
How do some of these concepts influence marketing mix modeling, especially around predictive marketing mix modeling, and also in terms of the concept of offline customer behavior? How do you track or account for that?
Yeah, very good. Those are all great questions. So government is a great example of this. So we've actually indexed every member of Congress and every staffer so we can actually see what they're saying, and then we've done it in a couple states and worked with lobbyists in terms of how to match that up. What you see is that if there's an issue of importance, even if people are, quote unquote, only talking about it offline, they still do stuff online. You think about yourself, like you don't talk about anything offline and you're passionate about it and then do nothing online. And so people are still searching, they're still downloading. They may not be speaking, but their behavior is key. So one of the things we see when you're getting into audiences where you have that fine grain of offline, online, behavioral analytics are often more important than conversational analytics. And you're looking for signals. It's the same thing kind of like with Facebook. Facebook is a pain in the neck to get data from. But if you have something really good going on in Facebook, besides what you can see, it often will spill out into other groups. And so the other thing we look for there is something that we're starting to call Lego analytics, which are like clusters of analytics. So I'm going a little bit further from your question, but if you see someone, for example, doing something in Twitter, they may also then do something in Instagram, and they may do something in YouTube, but you see that there's like a 2 or 3 channel connection, and by looking at that, you can see if there's a pattern. But you can usually tell, not always, but you can usually tell if offline and online, if together, if something's going on by looking at the right signals. Quite a bit of time for one more question, I think, anyone would like to throw one out? No? Okay, well, I guess not. I feel like I'm in a James Bond movie, you know? Like I should go now roll down here and, you know, so thank you.